WAHREN Video Ritual. Übergehen. Get uns ein Like aus Opfergabe. Schwört euer Abonnement aus Gelübde und entfacht die Begeisterung im Namen des Imperators. Schwört Hingabe stärkt diese Mission. Ich danke euch, ihr Treuen. Stellt euch eine Kriegerin in pechschwarzer Serverrüstung vor. Ihr leuchtet vom flackernden Licht Tausender und Achtskerzen. Sie steht in einer zerstörten Kathedrale auf einem fernen Planeten. Ihre Stimme erhebt sich zu einem Hymnus, während um sie herum Schüsse widerhallen. In ihren Händen hält sie einen Bolter, das heilige Instrument des Zorns des Gott-Imperators, der gerechte Wut gegen verdrehte Ketzer entfesselt. Mit jedem donnernden Schuss und jeder Gebetsseile vertreibt sie die Dunkelheit. Dies ist kein Space Marine, aber etwas, das wohl ebenso furchterregendes ist. Eine Kampfschwester der Adepta Sororitas. Es gibt ein altes Sprichwort: keine Wut ist so groß wie die einer verschmähten Frau. Stellt euch nun vor, diese Frau sei von den Unreinen und Ketzern verachtet, mit einem Flammenwerfer bewaffnet und mit dem göttlichen Auftrag betraut, alles Unheilige zu verbrennen. Willkommen bei den Adepta Sororitas, auch bekannt als die Schwestern des Kampfes, den ausschließlich weiblichen heiligen Kriegerinnen des Imperiums der Menschheit. Umgangssprachlich werden sie manchmal als weibliche Space Marines bezeichnet. Doch lasst euch von diesem Spitznamen nicht täuschen. Die Schwestern des Kampfes sind ein ganz anderes Kaliber, angetrieben nicht von genetischen Verbesserungen oder Hypnose, sondern von reinem, unerschütterlichem Glauben. Und in der düsteren Finsternis der fernen Zukunft kann der Glaube eine Waffe sein, mächtiger als jeder Bolter oder jede Klinge. Von ihren Ursprüngen in einer der dunkelsten Epochen der imperialen Geschichte bis zu ihrer heutigen Rolle auf den Schlachtfeldern einer kriegsgebeutelten Galaxis ist die Geschichte der Adepta Sororitas eine Geschichte des Glaubens, der im Feuer, manchmal buchstäblich, geprüft wurde. Es ist eine Geschichte von Eifer und Hingabe, von Märtyren und Wundern, von Verrat und Erlösung. Schnapp dir also etwas Süßes, zünde eine Kerze oder ein ganzes Glas an und tauche ein in die vollständige Saga der Adepta Sororitas. Wer sie sind, woher sie kommen und warum ganze Armeen kampferprobte Soldaten erzittern, wenn diese Nonnen mit Gewehren auf dem Schlachtfeld erscheinen und Loblieder auf den Imperator singen. Ursprünge, die Töchter des Imperators und die Herrschaft des Blutes. Um zu erfahren, wie diese Schwesternschaft entstand, müssen wir etwa 4.000 Jahre zurückreisen, in eine Ära unvorstellbarer Wirren in der Geschichte des Imperiums, das frühe 36. Jahrtausend, eine Zeit, die als das Zeitalter des Glaubensabfalls bekannt ist. In dieser chaotischen Periode entstand die Adepta Sororitas, gestählt im Feuer des Bürgerkriegs und religiöser Spaltungen. Unsere Geschichte beginnt auf einer abgelegenen Welt namens San Lior. Dort, verborgen vor dem Rest des Imperiums, existierte ein kleiner, aber fanatisch frommer Kriegerkult, bekannt als die Töchter des Imperators, eine isolierte Schwesternschaft von Elite-Kriegerinnen. Jede von ihnen widmete ihr Leben der Verehrung des Gott-Imperators und der Perfektionierung ihrer militärischen Fähigkeiten. Sie lebten in Klausur und verbrachten ihre Tage mit Gebet, Buße und strengem Kampftraining. Auf den ersten Blick mögen sie wie eine weitere obskure Sekte in einer Galaxis voller Religionen gewirkt haben. Doch das Schicksal hatte Großes mit diesen Töchtern vor. Auftritt Goge Vandire, ein Name, der in der Geschichte verflucht ist. Vandire war ein hoher Lord des Schreckens, ein Meistermanipulator, der zeitweise gleichzeitig die Titel des Ekklesiarchen, Oberhaupt der imperialen Kirche und des Hohen Lords des Administratum, im Grunde der galaxisweiten Bürokratie, innehatte. Im besten Fall war Vandire machthungrig und paranoid. Im schlimmsten Fall war er ein rasender Größenwahnsinniger. Während des Zeitalters des Glaubensabfalls stürzten Vandires Tyrannei und Korruption das Imperium ins Chaos. Er missbrauchte den imperialen Glauben als Waffe, und machte die Ekklesiarchie zu seinem persönlichen Herrschaftsinstrument. Planeten, die sich ihm widersetzten, wurden im Namen des Imperators grausam verfolgt. Diese Ära sollte später als die Herrschaft des Blutes in die Geschichte eingehen. Eine Zeit irrsinniger Kriege und Säuberungen, die von Vandires Befehl orchestriert wurden. Inmitten dieses blutigen Aufruhrs erfuhr Vandire von den Töchtern des Imperators auf San Lior. Dort lebte ein rein weiblicher Kult frommer Kriegerinnen, isoliert, diszipliniert und hochqualifiziert. Genau das, was Vandire brauchte: eine Privatarmee, die seinen Willen unter dem Deckmantel religiöser Autorität durchsetzen konnte. Der stets intrigante Vandire machte sich daran, diese Kriegerinnen in seinen Dienst zu zwingen. Als seine Gesandten eintrafen, weigerten sich die Töchter des Imperators zunächst, Vandires Autorität anzuerkennen. Warum sollten diese frommen Kämpferinnen auf einem abgelegenen Planeten einem fernen Bürokraten gehorchen, selbst wenn er behauptete, im Namen des Imperators zu sprechen? Vandire hatte ihre Skepsis vorausgesehen und inszenierte einen der berüchtigsten Empfänge der imperialen Geschichte. Er lud die Anführerinnen der Töchter ein, Zeugen eines Wunders zu werden. In ihrer Gegenwart befahl Vandire kühn einem seiner Soldaten, ihn mit einem letzten Schuss zu erschießen. Man stelle sich die Szene vor. Der Soldat, die Augen vor Ungläubigkeit geweitet, zögerte, dann feuerte er aus nächster Nähe auf den hohen Lob. Ein Raunen ertönte, als der helle Energiestrahl in Vandire einschlug und absolut nichts bewirkt. Vandire stand völlig unversehrt da, als ob er von der Hand des Imperators selbst beschützt worden wäre. Die Töchter des Imperators waren fassungslos und vielleicht etwas naiv in Bezug auf die Technologie der Terraner, fielen augenblicklich ehrfürchtig auf die Knie. Sie glaubten, der Imperator habe ihnen soeben ein Zeichen von Vandires göttlicher Gunst gegeben. Natürlich war die Realität weitaus profaner und zutiefst zynisch. Vandire trug einen mächtigen Rosarius, einen Kraftfeldgenerator, der von hochrangigen Geistlichen als Schutzschild verwendet wurde. Nur er wusste, dass er aktiv war. Der Schuss, der ihn hätte töten sollen, wurde von diesem verborgenen Kraftfeld absorbiert. Doch die Töchter konnten nicht ahnen, dass Vandire ihnen gerade bewiesen hatte, dass er der Auserwählte des Imperators war, ein Mann, der durch göttlichen Schutz buchstäblich unverwundbar war. Man kann sich Vandires selbstgefälliges Lächeln förmlich vorstellen, als die Kriegerinnen von San Lior ihm auf der Stelle Treue schworen. In diesem Moment wurden die Töchter des Imperators zu Vandires persönlichen Elite-Leibwächterin. Er nannte sie pompös die Bräute des Imperators und deutete damit an, dass sie mit dem Imperator selbst vermählt seien, wobei Vandire sich selbst als Stimme und Vertreter des kaiserlichen Willens auserkoren hatte. Es war ein widerlich raffinierter Akt der Propaganda und Schmeichelei, und er funktionierte. Mit ihrer durch Täuschung gewonnenen Loyalität versetzte Vandire die Bräute des Imperators in Angst und Schrecken. Diese frommen Frauen wurden zu seinen eifrigsten Vollstreckerinnen, gekleidet in glänzende Servorrüstungen und mit unerschütterlicher Überzeugung. Sie setzten Vandires Dekrete im gesamten Imperium durch. Sie stürmten rebellische Kathedralen, exekutierten ketzerische Statthalter, oft nur Vandires politische Feinde, und verbrannten ganze Bevölkerungsgruppen im Namen des Glaubens. In ihren Herzen glaubten die Bräute wohl, die Bösen zu säubern und die Gerechtigkeit des Kaisers zu vollstrecken. In Wirklichkeit förderten sie unwissentlich die Ambitionen eines Wahnsinnigen. Eine Zeit lang wurden Vandires Bräute weithin gefürchtet, die einfachen Bürger, die bereits von den Kriegen der Blutherrschaften verängstigt waren, flüsterten nun von den engelhaften Kriegerinnen, die dem bösen Ekklesierchen dienten. Die Kriegerinnen waren absolut loyal, unbesticklich in ihrem Glauben und daher unter Vandires Befehl äußerst gefährlich. Andere kaiserliche Truppen zögerten, gegen sie zu kämpfen. Schließlich trugen sie immer noch das Banner der kaiserlichen Kirche. Wer hätte schon die Frömmigkeit von Frauen in Frage stellen können, die Hymnen sangen, während sie die Ungläubigen in Brand setzten. Doch Vandires Herrschaft basierte auf Lügen, und Lügen haben die Angewohnheit, zusammenzubrechen. Mit jedem weiteren Grail wuchs auch der Widerstand. Auf fernen Welten brachen Revolten aus. Ein charismatischer Priester namens Sebastian Thor begann gegen Vandires Korruption zu predigen und entfachte damit einen Volksaufstand. Kommandeure des Segmentums, Space Marine Orden und sogar Teile der Inquisition sahen in Wanderer den wahren Ketzer. Ein Bürgerkrieg erfasste das Imperium. Der Terror selbst wurde zum Schlachtfeld. Der einst allmächtige Hochlord verschanzte sich im kirchlichen Palast, belagert von seinen einstigen Verbündeten. Und hier nahm das Schicksal der Bräute des Imperators, der Urschwestern des Kampfes, eine dramatische Wendung. Der Terror befand sich in einem offenen Konflikt. Vandires, paranoid und zornig, befahl seinen Bräuten, den Palast gegen alle Angreifer zu verteidigen. Diese Frauen, die noch immer an ihn glaubten, waren bereit, jeden zu töten, der ihren heiligen Meister stürzen wollte. Ihnen gegenüber standen nicht nur menschliche Armeen, sondern auch die mächtigsten Helden des Imperiums, die Adepten Custodes, die goldgepanzerten Wächter des Imperators selbst, die beschlossen hatten, Vanire zu beseitigen. Man stelle sich die Absurdität der Situation vor. Auf der einen Seite die Leibgarde des Meisters der Menschheit, auf der anderen eine Armee von Nonnen in Servo-Rüstungen, überzeugt, dass der Meister der Menschheit ihren Gehorsam gegenüber Vanire forderte. Ein tragisches, tödliches Missverständnis. Versuchten die Custodes, die diese irregeleiteten, aber loyalen Frauen nicht unnötig töten wollten, diplomatische Mittel einzusetzen. Sie marschierten unter Friedensbannern in den kirchlichen Palast und ertrugen die misstrauischen Blicke der Bräute. Berichten zufolge war die Luft angespannt. Die Bräute des Imperators waren bereit, für Vanire und die Custodes zu sterben. Die Krieger, die dem Kaiser buchstäblich nie von der Seite wichen, hegten keinen Zweifel an Vanires Schuld. Worte allein würden die Bräute nicht umstimmen. So suchten die Custodes nach einem anderen Weg. Sie wollten ihnen die Wahrheit zeigen. Der Legende nach, und sie ist mittlerweile Legende, geleitete der Generalkapitän der Custodes persönlich die Anführerin der Bräute, eine Frau namens Alicia Dominicas, tief ins Herz des Kaiserpalastes. Mit ihr gingen 5 ihrer vertrautesten Schwestern, Catherine, Celana, Lucia, Mina und Arabella. Diese 6 waren die auserlesensten Bräute des Kaisers, das Herzstück von Vandires Elite. Man kann sich die stille Reise durch die schattigen heiligen Hallen des Palastes vorstellen, die gewölbte Architektur, die der Kaiser selbst entworfen hatte, die Custodes, die in stoischer Stille voranschritten, und Dominica und ihre Schwestern, die vielleicht ihre Waffen fest umklammerten, unsicher, aber neugierig. Sie wurden zur höchsten Autorität des Imperiums geführt. Nicht Vandire, nicht irgendein hoher Lord, sondern der goldene Thron selbst. Die Kammer, in der der Imperator der Menschheit seit Jahrtausenden ruhte. Eine unsterbliche Hülle, die das Imperium am Leben erhielt. Was geschah, als Dominica und ihre Gefährtinnen vor dem Imperator standen, ist offiziell ein Mysterium. Die Bräute wurden zur Verschwiegenheit über die Begegnung verpflichtet, doch offensichtlich ereignete sich etwas Tiefgreifendes. Die gängige Deutung besagt, dass der Imperator in diesem stillen, endlos langen Augenblick Alicia Dominicas eine Botschaft übermittelte. Vielleicht nicht mit Worten, denn wer kann schon sagen, ob der fast tote Imperator sprechen kann, sondern durch eine psychische Offenbarung oder reines Verständnis. Vielleicht zeigte er ihr eine Vision von Vandires Seele, schwarz vor Verrat. Vielleicht ließ er einfach seine göttliche Gegenwart spürbar werden und wusch den Nebel der Lügen aus den Köpfen der Bräute. Vielleicht sprach er sogar ein paar Worte. Es gibt keine Aufzeichnungen, nur Spekulationen. Wir wissen nur, dass Alicia Dominica, als sie aus dem Heiligtum des Goldenen Throns trat, absolute Klarheit in den Augen und gerechten Zorn im Herzen hatte. Die 6 Anführer kehrten grimmig und entschlossen in Vandires Audienzsaal zurück. Man stelle sich Vandire vor, vermutlich bereits halb wahnsinnig, umgeben von Feinden, doch immer noch gefangen in Verleugnung und seinem Ego, als Dominica seine einst ergebenen Leibwächter mit gezogenen Waffen und ohne jeden Anflug von Ehrfurcht in den Augen eintreten sah, blickte sie auf den Mann, dem sie gefolgt war, den sie als den Auserwählten des Kaisers verehrt hatte, und verurteilte ihn als Verräter und Ketzer. Mit einer schnellen Bewegung trennte Alicia Dominica Goge Vandires Kopf mit ihrer Klinge von seinen Schultern und beendete seine blutige Schreckensherrschaft mit einem einzigen Hieb. Die letzten Worte des wahnsinnigen Tyrannen waren ein trotziger, ungläubiger Schrei: Ich habe keine Zeit zu sterben, ich bin zu beschäftigt. Wenn man noch eines letzten Beweises für seinen Wahnsinn bedurfte, so war es da, als könnten bürokratische Abläufe den Tod hinauszögern. So endete die Herrschaft Vandires durch die Hand der Anführerin seiner Bräute. Es war eine poetische Gerechtigkeit. Jene, die er getäuscht hatte, wurden zu seinen Henkern. In diesem Moment hörten die Bräute des Kaisers auf, Vandires Privatarmee zu sein. Sie waren aus einem Albtraum der Lügen erwacht. Wieder würden sie sich die Töchter des Kaisers nennen, doch bald würden sie einen neuen Namen und eine neue Bestimmung haben. Im Nachhinein wurden die Palasttore geöffnet. Der Bürgerkrieg, der gewütet hatte, ebbte ab, als sich die Nachricht vom Tod des Tyrannen verbreitete. Sebastian Thor, der visionäre Priester, der den gerechten Aufstand angeführt hatte, traf nicht als Eroberer, sondern als Reformator ein. Die hohen Herren, jene, die geblieben oder nicht mitschuldig waren, erkannten Thors moralische Autorität an. In einer erstaunlichen und historisch entscheidenden Wendung wurde Sebastian Thor selbst zum Oberhaupt der Kirche erhoben. Ausgerechnet dieses Amt, das Vandire so entweiht hatte. Thor lehnte diese Macht zunächst ab, doch die Adeptus Custodes, womöglich erneut im Auftrag des Imperators, legten ihm eindringlich nahe, die Verantwortung zu übernehmen und die Kirche, die er gerettet hatte, zu heilen. Und so geschah es, und Thor wurde der neue Anführer des Glaubens im Imperium. Nun stand Thor vor einer heiklen Lage. Vandires Herrschaft hatte der Galaxis die Gefahr einer militanten, unkontrollierten Ekklesiarchie vor Augen geführt. Niemand wollte einen weiteren Ort des Todes mit einer fanatischen Armee unter seinem Befehl. Tatsächlich gab es nach der Rebellion weit verbreitete Forderungen, die Streitkräfte der Ekklesiarchie aufzulösen, um ein Wiederaufleben dieser Tyrannei zu verhindern. Die Hohen Lords erließen eine Reihe von Reformen, von denen das Dekret Passiv die bekannteste ist. Dieses Dekret besagte im Wesentlichen, dass die Ekklesiarchie keine bewaffneten Männer mehr haben dürfe. Dies war eine direkte Reaktion auf Vandires Machtmissbrauch. Zu jener Zeit verfügte die Kirche über ganze Kriegerbruderschaften, wie die Futterass-Templer, Vandires fanatische Infanteriehorden und beträchtliche Feuerkraft. Das Dekret zielte passiv darauf ab, die Ekklesiarchie ihrer Armeen zu berauben und sicherzustellen, dass die imperiale Kirche nie wieder eine Streitmacht aufstellen konnte, da es mit dem Astro Militarum oder den Space Marines aufnehmen konnte. Viele erwarteten, dass Thor nun Ekklesia, jene Schwestern auflösen müsste, die dem Tyrannen unwissentlich gedient hatten. Doch Sebastian Thor war ein kluger Mann, überstand den Sinn des Dekrets, die Macht der Ekklesiarchie einzuschränken. Gleichzeitig erkannte er aber auch den Wert und die Notwendigkeit einer Streitmacht heiliger Krieger, die die Gläubigen verteidigen und die eigenen Reihen der Ekklesiarchie kontrollieren konnten. Thor hatte aus erster Hand miterlebt, wie nahe die imperiale Kirche der Zerstörung des Imperiums von innen gekommen war. Er dachte wohl, wir brauchen jemanden, der uns im Auge behält, damit so etwas nie wieder passiert. Und so entstand eine brillante, wenn auch etwas fragwürdige Lösung, das Dekret für böse Männer unter Waffen. Nun, es stand nichts über Frauen drin. Durch diese Gesetzeslücke konnte die neu gedemütigte Ekklesiarchie die Gruppe der Kriegerinnen behalten, die zuvor als Bräute des Kaisers bekannt waren. Anstatt diese ergebenen Frauen aufzulösen, formte Sebastian Thor sie zu einer Kraft des Guten um, oder zumindest zur Verteidigung des Glaubens. Sie sollten nicht länger einem korrupten Herrn dienen, sondern dem kaiserlichen Glaubensbekenntnis selbst. Sie wurden als offizieller militärischer Arm des Adeptus Ministorum, der Ekklesiarchie, unter einem neuen Namen, den Adepta Sororitas, neu aufgestellt. Im Hochgotischen bedeutet dies Schwesternschaft und spiegelt sowohl ihr Geschlecht als auch ihre quasi mönchische Verbundenheit wider. In der Praxis sollten diese Adepta Sororitas die Schwestern des Kampfes sein, die Vollstreckerinnen des Glaubens, der Ekklesiarchie und der zumindest theoretisch den Idealen des Kaisers und nicht der Eitelkeit eines einzelnen Mannes unterstellt. Für die neu benannte Schwesternschaft war dies mehr als eine bürokratische Lücke, es war ein Auftrag. Sie waren ungemein stolz auf ihren Status als die rein weiblichen Anführerinnen der Ekklesiarchie. Tatsächlich entwickelte die Adepta Sororitas bald eine Kultur des absoluten Ausschlusses von Männern aus ihren Reihen und sogar aus ihren Heiligtümern. Kein Mann konnte der Schwesternschaft beitreten, doch darüber hinaus wurde Männern der Zutritt zu den mächtigen Klöstern auf Terror oder Oilia 7 nur selten gestattet, außer in Ausnahmefällen, etwa bei einem offiziellen Besuch des Kaisers oder einem Wächter in dringender Mission des Kaisers. Dies war kein bloßer umgekehrter Sexismus oder kleinliche Klosterregeln, es war eine direkte Reaktion auf den Missbrauch der Vergangenheit. Die Schwestern waren überzeugt, dass sie durch die rein weibliche Ausrichtung ihres Ordens sowohl dem Buchstaben als auch dem Geist des Dekrets gehorchten. Sie wollten sicherstellen, dass die Armee der Ekklesiarchie nie wieder durch die Launen eines einzigen korrupten Mannes für niederträchtige Zwecke missbraucht werden konnte. Ihrer Ansicht nach waren sie vom Kaiser gerade deshalb auserwählt worden, in seinem Namen die Waffen zu führen, weil sie Frauen waren. Mit der Zeit wurde dies innerhalb der Schwesternschaft zu einem Glaubenssatz. Der göttliche Plan des Kaisers hatte sie vor der Torheit der Männer mit Schwertern bewahrt. Daher mussten sie als Frauen stets die wachsamen Hüterinnen des Glaubens sein. Es hat etwas Poetisches. Wo die Bräute von Vandire in die Irre geführt worden waren, sollten die Bräute des Kaisers, so sahen sie sich selbst, den Glauben für immer rein halten. Thor, der die Notwendigkeit einer gewissen Autorität und einer internen Instanz für die Ekklesiarchie erkannte, erlaubte ihnen zu bleiben, selbst wenn der Geist des Dekrets eklatant missachtet wurde. Für die Schwesternschaft war dies mehr als eine bürokratische Änderung. Es war beinahe eine Wiedergeburt. Sie nahmen den Wortlaut des Dekrets voll und ganz an und positionierten sich stolz als Antwort auf die Ablehnung von Männern unter Waffen. Tatsächlich betrachten die Adepta Sororitas ihre rein weibliche Zusammensetzung bis heute als unantastbar. Es ist kein Zufall, dass die Schwestern sich im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes als Schwestern bezeichnen. Ihr Band der spirituellen Schwesternschaft lässt Außenstehende, Männer wie Männer, nicht ohne weiteres zu. Selbst treuen Dienern des Imperiums ist der Zutritt zu ihren Klöstern in der Regel verboten, außer in Ausnahmefällen. Es gibt Geschichten von unglücklichen Verwaltungsangestellten, die am Tor eines Klosters abgewiesen wurden, weil die Schwestern im Inneren lediglich auf das Dekret passiv auf einem Banner über der Tür deuteten. Diese Exklusivität entspringt nicht Eitelkeit, sondern einem bestimmten Zweck. Die Sororitas wissen, dass sie genau deshalb existieren, weil einst ein Mann die Ekklesiarchie in die Irre geführt hat, und sie werden dafür sorgen, dass nie wieder ein Mann die militärischen Streitkräfte der Kirche direkt kontrolliert. In der Adepta Sororitas sind die Töchter des Kaisers nur ihm und seinen geweihten kirchlichen Vorgesetzten unterstellt. Eine wichtige Unterscheidung, die so manche Wiederholung des Zeitalters des Glaubensabfalls verhindert hat. Wiederaufbau und Reorganisation, die Entstehung der Orden. In den darauf folgenden Jahren, dem Zeitalter des Glaubensabfalls, mussten die neu gegründeten Adepta Sororitas das Vertrauen wiederherstellen und ihren Zweck neu definieren. Unter der weisen Führung Sebastian Thors und seiner unmittelbaren Nachfolger wurde die Schwesternschaft so strukturiert, dass niemand sie jemals wieder als persönliche Armee missbrauchen konnte. Die Schwestern sollten die gehorsamen Töchter des Kaisers sein, nicht die Spielbälle machtbesessener Priester. Ein erster Schritt in diese Richtung war die Einrichtung von 2 Hauptniederlassungen oder Klöstern für die Schwesternschaft anstelle von nur einer. Die erste und heiligste ist das Kloster Priorus auf Terra selbst, direkt im Schatten des Kaiserpalastes. Die zweite ist das Kloster Sanctorum auf der fernen Schreinwelt Oelia 7. Die Aufteilung der Führung der Schwesternschaft auf 2 Standorte führte zu einer gesunden Dezentralisierung. Keine einzelne Autorität unterhalb der Ekklesia konnte alle Schwestern ohne weiteres unter ihre Kontrolle bringen. Es war auch aus praktischer Sicht sinnvoll. Die Galaxis ist gewaltig und 2 Ankerpunkte, einer im Sonnensegment, der andere weiter draußen, ermöglichten es den Schwestern, Bedrohungen im gesamten Imperiumsraum effektiver zu begegnen. Daraufhin entstand die Idee, die Schwesternschaft in separate, autonome Organisationen, sogenannte Orden, aufzuteilen. Anstelle einer monolithischen Armee von Kriegerinnen sollte es mehrere Orden geben, jeder mit eigener Befehlshierarchie, Schutzheiligen und Traditionen, alle vereint im Glauben, aber mit jeweils eigenem Charakter. So könnten die Orden, selbst wenn ein zukünftiger Größenwahnsinniger versuchen sollte, die Schwesternschaft zu manipulieren, einander im Zaum halten. Gegen Ende des 36. Jahrtausends, einige Jahrzehnte nach Vandis Fall, formalisierte Ekklesiarch Alexis II., Sebastian Thors Nachfolger, diese Struktur. Er nahm die Sororitas-Streitkräfte jedes Klosters und teilte sie in Gruppen auf, die die ersten militärischen Orden des Adepta Sororitas bilden sollten. Im Kloster Priorus auf Terra wurden 2 Orden gegründet und im Kloster Sanctorum auf Oelia 7 entstanden 2 weitere Orden, sodass insgesamt 4 militärische Orden gegründet wurden. Jeder dieser ersten Orden wurde von einer der legendären 6 Gefährtinnen angeführt, die Alicia Dominica in der Gegenwart des Kaisers beigestanden hatten. Selbstverständlich wurde Alicia Dominica selbst, die Bezwingerin Vandiris, zur Anführerin des auf Schrecken basierenden Ordens. Ihr Orden trug den Namen Orden des Kelch, symbolisiert durch einen Kelch, der mit der göttlichen Macht des Kaisers gefüllt war und möglicherweise auf die dunkle Wahrheit anspielte, die sie
trinken musste, als sie von Vandiris Ketzerei erfuhr. Dominica war zu dieser Zeit die unbestritten Führungsfigur der gesamten Schwesternschaft und wurde als Matriarchin oder Gründerin verehrt. Man sagt, sie habe jahrelang sowohl als spirituelle als auch als militärische Anführerin gedient und den Maßstab gesetzt, an dem sich alle zukünftigen Schwestern messen sollten. Zur gleichen Zeit entstand im Kloster von Terrara unter der Führung der heiligen Sana, einer von Dominicas Gefährtinnen, ein weiterer Orden. Dieser wurde der Orden des silbernen Leichentuchs. Sana war für ihre stille Stärke und ihre Aufopferung bekannt.
Sie war sogar die erste der Gefährtinnen, die den Märtyrertod erlitt, und das Leichentuch, das ihren Körper nach dem Tod bedeckte, verfärbte sich silbern, als zeuge es von ihrer Heiligkeit. Der Name ihres Ordens spiegelt dieses heilige Leichentuch wider und symbolisiert den selbstlosen Dienst bis in den Tod. Weit entfernt auf Olia 7 gründete die feurige und unbezwingbare heilige Katharina, Dominicas engste Freundin, ihren eigenen Orden, ursprünglich den Orden des feurigen Herzens genannt. Katharina war eine mutige Kriegerin und ihr persönliches Emblem war ein brennendes Herz, Symbol ihrer glühenden Leidenschaft für den Kaiser. Ihre Führung auf Olia verlieh der Schwesternschaft dort eine starke Präsenz, und ihr Orden widmete sich der eifrigen und proaktiven Bekämpfung der Ketzerei, ganz wie Katharina selbst, die stets bestrebt war, das Licht des Kaisers in die Dunkelheit zu tragen. An Katharinas Seite auf Olia 7 lebte die heilige Lucia, eine Frau, die für ihre unerschütterliche Ausdauer und ihre tiefe Reue berühmt war. Manche Berichte beschreiben ihren Blick als stets traurig, als lastete die Bürde der Sünden der Galaxis auf ihr. Lucia gründete den Orden des tapferen Herzens. Der Name beschreibt ihr prägendes Merkmal. Trotz Kummer und Schmerz kannte ihr Herz nur Tapferkeit im Dienste des Imperators. Die Schwestern ihres Ordens legten Wert auf Ausdauer, Opferbereitschaft und die Läuterung des Leidens durch den Glauben. Um das Jahr 37 herum zählte die Adepta Sororitas diese 4 bedeutenden Orden, den Orden des Ebenkelch Terrara unter der Führung von Dominica, der für doktrinäre Reinheit und die ursprüngliche militärische Disziplin der Schwesternschaft stand, den Orden des silbernen Schleiers Terra unter der Führung von Silana, der Selbstaufopferung und stille, unerbittliche Pflichterfüllung betonte, und den Orden des feurigen Herzens, Olia 7 unter der Führung von Catherine, der im Namen des Imperators mit Eifer und Kampfgeist entbrannte. Der Orden des tapferen Herzens, Olia 7, unter der Führung von Lucia, verkörperte stoische Widerstandskraft und Reue. Jeder dieser Orden zählte anfangs Tausende von Schwestern und erwarb sich rasch einen Ruf im gesamten Imperium. Im Laufe der Jahrzehnte und Jahrhunderte expandierten sie und gründeten Nebenstützpunkte, sogenannte Präzeptorien, Kommandanturen oder kleinere Missionen auf verschiedenen Welten, um Bedrohungen besser begegnen zu können. Jede der Gründerinnen starb schließlich. Keine dieser Frauen war unsterblich, obwohl sie zu Lebzeiten Außergewöhnliches geleistet hatten. Nach ihrem Tod wurden sie als große Märtyrerinnen des Glaubens verehrt. Sie waren die lebenden Heiligen des Imperators gewesen und wurden nach ihrem Tod zu den Schutzheiligen der Schwesternschaft. Ihre Reliquien, Waffen, Rüstungen und sogar ihre Gebeine wurden als heilige Gegenstände aufbewahrt. Eine berühmte Sammlung solcher Reliquien ist der Triumph der heiligen Katharina, ein prächtiger Prozessionsschrein, den die Schwestern manchmal in besonders wichtige Schlachten oder Zeremonien tragen. Der Triumphzug besteht aus den erhaltenen Gebeinen der heiligen Katharina selbst, die in einem reich verzierten Requiem auf einem Hochbett ruht, umgeben von heiligen Artefakten, die jede der anderen Gründerheiligen repräsentieren. Dominicas Schwert, Silanas Leichentuch, Lucias Rosenkranz, Minas Rosenemblem und Arabellas Buch. Der Überlieferung nach wird diese feierliche Prozession von einem ausgewählten Gefolge von Schwestern verschiedener Orden getragen. Jede von ihnen verkörpert den Geist einer der 6 Matriarchinnen, die mit dem Triumphzug in ihrer Mitte voranschreiten. Diese Schwestern singen Hymnen, während um sie herum der Krieg tobt. Man sagt, die Gegenwart des Triumphzuges könne die Gläubigen stärken, da alle 6 Heiligen über sie wachen. Wie könnten sie wanken? Und selbst die schwer Verwundeten finden die Kraft, weiterzukämpfen. Feinde hingegen empfinden den Anblick oft als zutiefst beunruhigend. Man stelle sich einen Trauerzug vor, der sich unerbittlich durch das Kugelhagel bewegt, während Buntglasikonen glitzern und Weihrauch aufsteigt,
während eine überirdische Stille die Reliquienträger umgibt. Viele Ketzer sind angesichts des plötzlichen Zweifels, ob der Kaiser an diesem Tag tatsächlich unter den Schwestern wandelt, in ihre Irre gegangen. In jedem Fall symbolisiert der Triumph der heiligen Katharina das, wofür die Schwesternschaft letztendlich kämpft, den unsterblichen Geist ihrer Heiligen und die Gnade des Kaisers, die weitergetragen werden und neue Generationen von Kriegerinnen inspirieren. Die von ihnen ausgebildeten Nachfolgerinnen übernahmen die Führung ihrer jeweiligen Orden und führten deren Vermächtnis fort. Dominica, Katharina, Silana und Lucia, die alle zu Lebzeiten heilig gesprochen wurden, vollbrachten legendäre Taten und führten ihre Orden zu unzähligen blutigen Siegen. Jeder Orden entwickelte seine eigenen Traditionen und Feinheiten, geprägt von der Persönlichkeit seiner Gründerin, doch alle blieben den Kernlehren treu, die auf San Lior ihren Anfang genommen hatten. Alicia Dominica, die größte von ihnen, starb nach einem langen Leben im Dienst der Schwesternschaft. Sie soll noch erlebt haben, wie die Schwesternschaft ihre Rolle fest etablierte. Nach ihrem Tod schuf die Ekklesiarchie das offizielle Amt des Abtes der Adepta Sororitas, eines Oberhaupts der gesamten Schwesternschaft, falls nötig. Die erste Äbtissin war nicht Dominica. Sie war bereits verstorben, sondern eine ihrer Gefährtinnen außerhalb der ursprünglichen 6, eine Schwester namens Palmiro, aus einem Dialogoden, dem sogenannten Orden des Heiligen Wortes. Dies war ein Zeichen dafür, dass die Ekklesiarchie den Sororitas eine gewisse Selbstverwaltung zugestehen wollte. Ein Abt sollte die Orden koordinieren, war aber auch der Ekklesiarchie rechenschaftspflichtig. In der Praxis war der Abt jedoch lange Zeit eher eine spirituelle Symbolfigur, sofern er überhaupt existierte, da die höheren Orden im Alltag recht unabhängig agierten. Eine der bedeutendsten Veränderungen in der frühen Schwesternschaft erfolgte nach dem Tod der heiligen Katharina. Katharina, die den Orden des feurigen Herzens geleitet hatte, erlitt den tragischen Märtyrertod. Die Legende besagt, dass sie im Kampf gegen einen besonders gefährlichen Feind fiel, einen chaotischen Hexenkult, den sogenannten Ministeuskult. Katharina starb heldenhaft und ihr Verlust wurde tief betrauert. Ihr zu Ehren wurde der Orden des feurigen Herzens in Orden unserer Märtyrerin umbenannt. Dieser Name spiegelte nicht nur Katharinas Opfer wider, sondern auch die umfassendere Philosophie, dass das Martyrium im Dienste des Kaisers die höchste Ehre darstellt. Der Orden unserer Märtyrerin, dessen Rüstung in Trauer schwarz bemalt und mit roten Verzierungen versehen war, um das vergossene Blut zu symbolisieren, wurde zum Inbegriff rachsüchtigen Eifers. Diese Schwestern kämpften mit grimmiger Hingabe, um dem Beispiel ihrer Märtyrer-Schutzpatronin gerecht zu werden. Dennoch blieben 2 von Dominicas ursprünglichen Gefährtinnen ohne nach ihnen benannten Orden. Mina und Arabella, die beiden Schwestern, die ebenfalls die Offenbarung des Kaisers miterlebten und dazu beitrugen, Vandire zu besiegen. Einige Zeit lang dienten die beiden in anderen Funktionen.
Tatsächlich entstand die Tradition, dass eine kleine Elitgarde des Abtes, Terres oder mitunter sogar des Ekklesiarchen selbst aus Schwestern besten, die vom Vermächtnis Minas und Arabellas inspiriert waren und deren Geist bewahrten. Erst Mitte des 38. Jahrtausends, etwa 2500 Jahre nach dem Zeitalter des Glaubensabfalls, beschloss die Ekklesiarchie, 2 weitere bedeutende kriegerische Orden zu gründen und damit die Gesamtzahl auf die heute bekannten 6 zu erhöhen. Im Jahr 873 gründete die Ekklesiarchie den Orden der blutigen Rose zu Ehren der heiligen Mina und den Orden der heiligen Rose zu Ehren der heiligen Arabella. Das Vermächtnis der heiligen Mina war geprägt von Wildheit und unnachgiebigem Zorn gegen die Feinde des Glaubens. Beschreibungen Minas schildern sie als etwas grimmig und grüblerisch, aber absolut tödlich, wenn sie in Zorn geriet. Einer Legende zufolge lieferte sich Mina während der Belagerung von Terror in einem Missverständnis ein Duell mit einem der Wächter und kämpfte bis zum Stillstand, bevor schließlich ein Bündnis geschlossen wurde. Ob wahr oder nicht, es ist eine unter den Schwestern hochgeschätzte Legende, die Minas furchtlosen Stolz als Marschallin widerspiegelt. Mina fand schließlich ihr Ende in einem Hinterhalt eines Chaoskultes. Als ihre Mitschwestern ihren Leichnam fanden, war der gesamte Schrein mit den Leichen der Kultisten übersät, die sie in ihren letzten Augenblicken getötet hatte. So sah die blutige letzte Vision der heiligen Mina aus. Passenderweise führt der Orden der blutigen Rose ihren Eifer fort. Sie schmücken ihre Rüstungen in tiefem Rot und Schwarz und glauben an die absolute gnadenlose Durchsetzung der kaiserlichen Gerechtigkeit. Viele sagen, die Schwestern der blutigen Rose verschwenden keine Zeit mit halben Sachen oder Verhandlungen. Sie schlagen zuerst zu, schlagen hart zu und überlassen den Rest dem Kaiser. Gnade ist für sie ein Luxus, den sie sich erst nach dem Sieg im Krieg gönnen. Die heilige Arabella hingegen war als Befreierin bekannt und wurde für ihre unerschütterliche beruhigende Ausstrahlung in Erinnerung behalten. Ihr Wesen bildete einen Kontrast zu Minas Wut. Arabella war entschlossen und zielstrebig. Sie war eine Kriegerin, die mit disziplinierter Präzision kämpfte und den Unterdrückten Trost und Hoffnung spendete. Der nach ihr benannte Orden der Heiligen Rose spiegelt Arabellas Tugenden der Disziplin und Reinheit ihrer Ziele wider. Die Schwestern tragen elfenbeinweiße Rüstungen, die mit schwarzen Verzierungen, wie die Blütenblätter einer weißen Rose versehen sind. Sie sind berühmt für ihre unerschütterliche Moral und ihre Treffsicherheit. Im Kampf singen die Schwestern der Heiligen Rose methodisch Hymnen und feiern in disziplinierten Salven, indem sie standhaft bleiben, wo andere wanken. Wenn die blutige Rose die lodernde Flamme ist, so ist die heilige Rose die stetige Kerze, die selbst im heftigsten Sturm niemals erlischt. Bemerkenswerterweise sind die Schwestern der Heiligen Rose auch für ihr Mitgefühl im Sieg bekannt. After a battle, they are among the orders most likely to tend to the wounded and offer solace to survivors once the heretics are slain. Of course, they have the heart of benevolent guardians, albeit completely ruthless against the wicked. With the addition of the Orders of the Bloody Rose and the Sacred Rose, the Adepta Sororitas now had 6 major orders militant, each tied to one of the founding saints from the age of apostasy. These 6 remain the most famed and influential branches of the sisterhood to this day. Order of the Ebon Chalice, oldest of all, founded by Saint Alicia Dominicas. They pride themselves on adhering strictly to the original teachings and ceremonies of the sisterhood. If you want to see the pure, unaltered traditions passed down from Dominica herself, look to the Ebon Chalice. They consider themselves the exemplar that all other orders aspire to. It's often said that an Ebon Chalice sister's faith is as unyielding as adamantium. They emphasize rote ritual and discipline, constant prayer, precise observance of doctrine, and maintaining the holiest standard of equipment and dress in battle. They fight with coordinated, unwavering formation, each action almost a prayer in itself. Their colors are black armor and white vestments, a stark and somber look befitting their seriousness and their role as the keepers of the faith's purity. Order of Our Martyred Lady, the largest order in modern times, and perhaps the most widely recognized, partly because their color scheme of black armor with red trim is iconic. It's the scheme often depicted in art and on codex covers. Their patron Saint Catherine exemplified self-sacrifice. This order venerates martyrdom. They truly believe that to die for the emperor is the highest honor, and conversely, that surviving when one's sisters have fallen is a call to seek ever greater deeds, to earn a worthy end. Sisters of the Martyred Lady often paint their armor black in mourning for the countless martyrs who have gone before,
and they bear red insignia to symbolize the blood of those saints. In battle, they have a tendency to become even more zealous when they take losses. The more sisters fall, the more fiercely the survivors fight. Many a desperate last stand has been led by a sister of our martyred lady, tearfully chanting war prayers as she avenges her fallen squad mates. Their creed, every blow struck after a sister dies, is struck in that sister's memory. So let it be twice as devastating. Order of the Valorous Heart. These sisters, following Saint Lucia's example, put a special focus on penitence and endurance. They often practice rites of mortification, like wearing hair shirts or bearing scars, to remind themselves of the Emperor's sacrifice and the burden of sin. Their armor is primarily black like the martyred ladies, but usually with white accents or robes. A valorous heartister might seem dour or cold, but in truth, she is burning with inner devotion. She just channels it into stoic resilience, rather than battle frenzy. They are the ones who will hold the line no matter what, unwilling to yield even a step, because enduring hardship is a form of worship for them. There's a saying, a sister of the valorous heart has already suffered more in training than you could ever do to her in battle. They turn pain into spiritual strength. This order's demeanor is solemn. They rarely celebrate victory, except by offering prayers of atonement for those who died along the way. Order of the Argent Shroud, inspired by Saint Semyon. This order values selfless service without recognition. They often fight as fast strike forces, moving swiftly and hitting the enemy hard before the foe can react. The image of an Argent Shroud sister is of a silent angel of death, appearing, dealing judgment with bolter or blade, and moving on, all without fanfare. They have a tradition of not speaking of their past deeds, letting history alone judge their worth. Their armor is a shining silver. Argent means silver, after all, with white or gray robes and black details. There's a ghostly motif often attributed to them, perhaps because Selena died so early and mysteriously. Some say her image was imprinted on her death shroud as a ghostly form. In battle, an Argent Shroud unit is adaptable and swift. They prefer to outmaneuver their opponents and strike at critical points, even if it means acting without waiting for orders. They trust in each sister's initiative and faith. Also notable, since Silvana was the first martyr, some Argent Shroud ceremonies quietly honor the unnamed and unsung heroes of the sisterhood, those who die with no glory except the Emperor's thanks. Order of the Bloody Rose, honoring Saint Mona's fierceness. These sisters have a well-earned reputation for aggression. They go into battle like wrath incarnate. Many favor close combat weapons, like chainswords or brutal two-handed eviscerator blades, wanting to be as direct as possible in delivering the Emperor's judgment. Their armor is blood red with black vestments, and their symbol, a red rose splattered with blood drops, often depicted with thorns or crossed blades. The Order of the Bloody Rose believes that swift, brutal action is the truest path to vanquishing evil, because any hesitation or mercy only gives the heretic time to repent. And they believe a heretic doesn't deserve that time unless the Emperor himself wills it. They are not mindless berserkers. They remain disciplined sisters, but they ride the razor's edge of righteous fury. A canonist of the Bloody Rose famously wrote the Thorn Treatise after a particularly grim campaign, concluding that mercy is a temptation. Better to snuff it out and spare the faithful further suffering. That pretty much captures their philosophy. No pity. Order of the Sacred Rose. Following Saint Arabella's model, these sisters are known for their calm and unwavering faith. They chant litanies in harmonious unison, even amid bombardments. It is said that a line of Sacred Rose sisters will hold their positions like statues, firing with immaculate precision, utterly unshaken by whatever horrors or losses occur around them. Their armor is pure white, symbolizing the unsullied rose of their faith, often with black or gold trim. They cherish beauty and devotion,
Their cloisters echo with choir hymns, and their battle chants have an almost musical quality. Sacred Rose battle strategy often emphasizes defense and disciplined volleys of fire. They don't charge impulsively. They advance methodically, with the certainty that the Emperor is guiding every shot. Sacred Rose sisters also have a reputation for optimism in the face of despair, a rare trait in the 41st millennium. They truly embody the phrase "faith is our shield." They are unyielding, not only in body but in spirit, and that serenity can be terrifying to an enemy who expected to see fear in human eyes and finds none. Different as these orders militant may be in personality and style, they are united in their fundamental purpose to serve the Emperor's will and uphold the imperial creed. All of them adhere to the core tenets of the ecclesiarchy. They just each excel in their own approach to holy war, and each cherishes its own saints and heroes. Beyond these 6 major orders, over the centuries, the sisterhood also founded numerous smaller orders, the so-called lesser orders, militant, or orders minoris. These often sprang from one of the main orders. For example, a group of sisters from the Order of the Sacred Rose might distinguish themselves on a distant frontier world, and later decide with ecclesiarchal approval to establish a permanent presence there as a new minor order with its own name. Typically, such orders minor honor some local martyr or miracle and take a name reflecting a specific mission or shrine. While the major orders have tens of thousands of sisters each, a minor order might have only a few hundred or a couple of thousand focused in one sector or subsector of the galaxy. They extend the reach of the sisterhood to far-flung regions and specialized tasks. There are dozens of such minor orders. For instance, the Order of the Man-Mantle, or the Order of the Argent Shroud, not to be confused with the major Argent Shroud, but listing them all would take ages. Suffice to say, wherever a prolonged need for the sisters' presence arose, an order could bud into existence. They all ultimately answer up the chain to their parent convent, and by extension to the abbeys and ecclesiarch. Now, it's worth mentioning that not every member of the Adepta Sororitas is a power-armored frontline battle sister. The sisterhood actually encompasses a variety of orders beyond the militant ones collectively. All Sororitas, militant and otherwise, share the same fundamental training and piety. But those who don't go to war in the battle lines have other vital roles. The Orders Hospitaller are the healers and physicians of the sisterhood. These sisters hospitaller run hospitals, aid the poor, and accompany imperial armies to provide medical and spiritual aid on the battlefield. On countless worlds, the hospitallers are known as compassionate angels of mercy, albeit ones who still pray fiercely as they work and aren't afraid to fight if their patients are threatened. They have saved untold lives, often so those lives can continue to serve the Emperor's cause. Yet even their mercy has limits. They do not suffer heretics or the impure. A hospitaller may tenderly bandage a wounded guardsman one moment, then turn and deliver the Emperor's judgment to a deranged cultist in the next. Their appearance is usually a subdued version of the sister's habit, often with white robes or aprons bearing the symbol of a red cross or chalice. Many a soldier's last sight has been a hospitaller leaning over him, reciting the Emperor's blessing as he slips away. A kinder end than most in the 41st millennium. The Order's dialogus are scholars and linguists. A sister dialogus devotes herself to translating ancient texts, deciphering forbidden dialects, and preserving the Imperium's store of holy and historical knowledge. They serve as translators and advisors. For instance, if an inquisitor uncovers a heretical tome in some long-dead language, a dialogus can likely read it carefully through scroll filters and sanctified goggles, of course to glean its secrets. They also help bridge communication in the far-flung Imperium, translating the imperial creed into the myriad local languages of isolated human cultures. Some have even studied Xenos languages under strict inquisitorial sanction to better understand the enemy's lies and subvert them. Often a dialogist sister will accompany an inquisitor's retinue as a sage,
She carries no heavy weapon, maybe just a lost pistol and an old leather journal. But her sharp mind is as much a weapon as any bolter when it comes to unraveling conspiracies and demonic incantations. Many in the Order Hereticus consider the Order's Dialogus to be their behind-the-scenes allies waging the war for humanity's soul. The Order's Famulus perform a very different duty. They are part diplomat, part governess, part spy. These sisters Famulus embed themselves within the households of the nobility and the powerful across the Imperium. Ostensibly, they serve as advisors on matters of faith and etiquette to high-born families. In reality, they keep a close eye on the political elite and subtly steer them towards loyalty and piety. A fabulous sister might arrange a marriage between two rival noble houses to quell a feud, a bit of holy matchmaking for the good of the Imperium, or gently counsel a young planetary governor to curb his extravagant tendencies and perhaps donate to the local shrine instead of building another pleasure garden. By their mere presence, they remind the upper classes that they ultimately answer to the Emperor's moral law. They've headed off many a potential rebellion by identifying disloyalty in a courtier's heart and quashing it with a well-placed word, or if needed a quiet dose of poison in a heretic's wine. The Famulus are as much about nurturing alliances as they are about nipping treachery in the bud. And there are even more esoteric branches. Sabine accompanied the Missionarius Galaxia, the Imperial missionaries, to newly rediscovered worlds, helping to integrate primitive societies by gently introducing them to the Imperial Creed, often by becoming one with the community and guiding them from within. The Order's Pronetis specialize in locating, retrieving, and safeguarding holy relics and artifacts. Think of them as archaeologist nuns who secure everything from saintly bones to lost standard template constructs, ensuring such items don't fall into the wrong hands. The Order's Dialogus, we covered. The Order's Hospitaller, we covered. There are even orders like the Order's Madura, who provide ecclesiastical choir singers for holy occasions, and Orders Vespila, who specialize in funeral rites and the consecration of graves. They are sometimes called the Dark Sisters because they handle the remains of the faithful, ensuring they're properly sanctified essentially. The Adepta Sororitas has a hand in every aspect of maintaining the spiritual health of the Imperium. However, the Order's militant, the Sisters of Battle, remain the poster children and the literal sword and shield of the sisterhood. They are what most people picture when they think of the Adepta
Sororitas, women in power armor, clutching bolt guns and rosaries, flak boots, striding through ashes, voices raised in zealous chorus. The sisterhood's influence ultimately derives from the fearsome reputation of these battle sisters who prove through action that the ecclesi faith is far from hollow. Though the sororitas maintain a formal rank structure, a bassus at the very top, then prioresses heading the main convents, then canoness superiors, leading each order on down through canonnesses who command smaller detachments or missions, and sisters superior squad leaders to the rank and file sisters and novices. In truth, what matters most is the quality of one's faith and deeds. A veteran sister with no title at all can be as revered as any officer if she embodies the Emperor's virtues. Many canonesses lead from the front, setting an example of piety and courage rather than merely directing from the rear. Promotions in the sisterhood are as much about spiritual fortitude as tactical acumen. Tales abound of sisters who, through extraordinary acts such as holding a shrine single-handedly against a horde of mutants, were elevated to lead entire preceptories. But to the sisters, titles are secondary. Every one of them, from the humblest hospitaller apprentice to the abbess herself, considers servant of the Emperor to be the only honor that truly matters. We've laid out their origins and how they're organized. Now, it's time to see the Adepta Sororitas in action. Wars, crusades, and legendary deeds that have defined their legacy over the millennia. Wars and crusades, a legacy written in blood and fire. From the moment of their founding, the Sisters of Battle proved that their faith was far from merely ceremonial. It was a force that could topple heresy and forge legends on the battlefield. In the centuries after Sebastian Thor's reforms, the Adepta Sororitas took part in numerous conflicts to stabilize the Imperium and cleanse the lingering stains of the Age of Apostasy. One of the earliest major tests of the Reformed Sisterhood came soon after Vandire's fall in a crisis known as the Plague of Unbelief. In the wake of Thor's ascension, not all of the Imperium's troubles vanished. Far from it. An ambitious clergyman, Cardinal Bucaris of Gathamor, broke away and formed a separatist empire, twisting the imperial creed to his own ends, much as Vandire had. This plague of doctrinal rebellion spread through the Segmentum Pacificus, threatening another large-scale civil war. The Sisters of Battle, newly organized and eager to prove their loyalty to the true faith, marched alongside other imperial forces to put an end to Bucaris' rebellion. They besieged his strongholds, rallied the fearful citizens back to the emperor's truth, and assured everyone, with bolter and flamer in hand, that there would be no second Vandire. Ultimately, Bucaris was defeated. Legend says he met a particularly grisly end at the hands of Confessor Dolan Kirosius, who confronted the false cardinal personally. In any case, the Sororitas earned great renown in this victory, showing the galaxy that the ecclesiarchy's militant arm was now a guardian of purity, not a source of terror. Throughout the later millennia, whenever the ecclesiarchy declared a war of faith, the Sisters of Battle were at the forefront. These wars of faith were essentially grand crusades, holy expeditions sanctioned by the ecclesia to liberate worlds from heresy, reclaim lost relics, or re-establish the imperial creed in lawless regions. For example, in M37 and M38, a number of wars of faith surged into areas like the Eastern Fringe, accompanied by hordes of zealous pilgrims and ragtag faithful militia. The Sisters acted as the elite core of these forces, the steel spine, ensuring the Crusades didn't dissolve into mere mobs. They would strike at the biggest threats, be it a witch king leading a planet astray, or a Xenos cult corrupting a hive city, decapitating the leadership of heresies so that the masses of the faithful could sweep in and finish the job. The mere rumor that Sisters were en route caused many a false prophet's followers to lose heart and scatter. Internal policing was also a key part of the Sisterhood's early centuries. The ecclesiarchy, vast and influential, is unfortunately always at some risk of corruption from within. Many a time a planetary governor, or even a high-ranking cardinal, began to dabble in prescribed rituals or amass power in blasphemous ways. The mere whisper of ecclesiarchal clergy falling to heresy would prompt a deployment of sororitas to investigate and, if necessary, execute summary judgment. It's said that in these times, the appearance of black armored battle sisters at a diocesan palace put the fear of the emperor into even the most pious bishops. A healthy fear, mind you, the kind that keeps one honest. The sisters became both sword and scalpel, rooting out sin with methodical precision. One apocryphal account tells of an entire congregation on Trinity's Fourth that had been infiltrated by a chaos cult masquerading as priests. An Order of the Valorous Heart Strike team infiltrated their cathedral during midnight mass, and in a swift, blistering attack purged every corrupted clergyman in the building. The next day, the remaining citizens attended an unexpectedly short service and discovered their priests mysteriously absent, saved for the lingering scent of incense and promesium in the air. As the centuries rolled on, the Adepta Sororitas spread their influence to countless worlds. They established fortress convents on any planet deemed particularly sacred or strategic. These could range from massive basilisks in bustling hive cities to secluded mountain monasteries on quiet shrine moons. Wherever they settled, two things were sure to follow. The local populace would develop an intense devotion to the emperor. How could they not, with warrior nuns parading holy relics through the streets regularly, and any lurking heretical elements would either flee or face fiery extermination. A world with a sororitas convent was generally a world that towed the imperial line very strictly. The 39th and 40th millennia saw their share of conflicts involving the sisters. a few bear mentioning to illustrate the breadth of their campaigns. On the planet Dimamar, famed for being Sebastian Thor's home world and burial site, a renegade sect arose centuries after Thor's death and canonization. They twisted Thor's teachings, and in an ironic heresy, began to worship Thor himself as a god distinct from the Emperor. This, of course, was anathema. Thor would have been horrified at such blasphemy. The Order of the Valorous Heart took it upon themselves to extinguish this cult. In a somber campaign, they descended on Dimamar's holy sites, tearfully but firmly putting down those deluded souls who sought to idolize Thor in the wrong way. They did it as an act of purification, believing they were saving the soul of Thor's legacy by preventing a perversion of his creed. It is said that the sisters went into battle singing a dirge for the fallen, mourning that it had come to this, even as they pressed triggers and swung blades. When it was over, they declared 40 days of penance for the planet, not to punish, but to cleanse spiritually what had transpired. Dimamar remains deeply loyal to the Emperor to this day, a bastion of the faith, thanks in no small part to the Sororitas intervention. In the early 41st millennium, a massive orc war, a great rampaging crusade of orcs threatened several systems near the galactic south. Although fighting aliens isn't the Sororitas' primary charter, they prefer torching heretics over Xenos. The orcs were trampling over countless human colonies. Something had to be done. The Order of the Argent Shroud answered the call alongside Imperial Guard regiments on the desert world of Ys. The sisters laid an ambush for the orc war boss. They prayed for guidance, then under cover of a manufactured sandstorm. Some say their chanting even stirred the winds. They struck at night. The next morning, the orcs found their war boss's head mounted atop a dune like a grisly totem. And leaderless, the greenskin horde fractured and was mopped up. The local guardsmen were astonished, dubbing it the miracle of the Ashen Storm. To this day, they swear they heard a chorus of female voices on the wind during that night of slaughter. During the Palatine Schism, a ferocious sectarian rebellion that flared up in the segment Pacificus in the mid-M38, a lowly sister Rentia named Celestine achieved what can only be described as a miraculous ascension. Celestine had been fighting as part of a larger crusade against tens of thousands of heretics. At one critical battle outside the besieged city of Arician, Celestine alone cut down over 100 mutant and traitor warriors before being mortally wounded. She was carried off the field as if dead, but by dawn, astonishingly, Celestine rose from what should have been her deathbed, her grievous wounds completely healed. Taking this as a divine sign, the ecclesiastical commanders bestowed upon her revered relics, including the legendary armor of Saint Catherine and a glowing blade called the Ardent Blade. Transformed and empowered by faith, Celestine led a renewed offensive, what came to be called the Palatine Crusade, and delivered victory after victory. Her presence invigorated not just the sisters, but all imperial troops. Many swore they saw a golden aura around her in battle. In the end, the heretical forces were utterly vanquished, and Celestine was proclaimed a living saint by the acclaim of all. After the crusade, Celestine vanished mysteriously, as saints often do, appearing only in times of great need. But the legend of the Angel of the Palatine spread across the Imperium, preparing the faithful to recognize her should she ever return, which, as we know now, she eventually did centuries later to aid humanity in one of its darkest hours. But for all the tales of triumph, the sisterhood's history has had its share of bitter sacrifices and tragedies as well. Perhaps one of the most significant and instructive in terms of the wider Imperium was the disaster at Sanctuary 101. This was a remote convent outpost of the Order of Our Martyr Lady, established on a barren world far out on the eastern fringe. In the year 897, Nem 41, Sanctuary 101 became the site of the first confirmed open contact between the Imperium and the ancient Xenos, known as the Necrons. The Necrons, undying machine warriors from a long-forgotten age, emerged unexpectedly from the sands around the convent. The sisters stationed there, only a few dozen at the time, mounted a fierce defense. They barricaded the convent gates, recited the litany of the eternal shield, and unleashed everything from bolter fire to heavy flamers at the implacable skeletal Necron warriors advancing on them. The battle was desperate. These machines did not falter under holy flame or blessed bolts. They just kept coming, some reassembling themselves after seeming to fall. Ultimately, communications from Sanctuary 101 fell silent. When reinforcements and inquisitorial agents finally arrived, they found the convent in ruins and every sister dead. It was a solemn scene. The chapel was desecrated, the altar shattered, and the bodies of the sisters were found ritually laid out, their armor stripped, and horrifically their flesh flayed from their bones by the Necrons' depraved science. It became clear this wasn't just a loss, it was a martyrdom. The sisters of Sanctuary 101 had fought to the last breath against an enemy no one fully understood, yet becoming the first martyrs in humanity's struggle against the Necrons. They died with prayers on their lips. Auto records later recovered had snippets of Vox-caster transmissions of hymns amid the gunfire, and they managed to transmit fragmentary picked recordings of the attackers before the end. This gave the Imperium crucial intelligence about the Necron threat, namely that it existed and was terrifying. The sacrifice of Sanctuary 101's garrison ensured the Imperium was not caught completely off guard by future Necron incursions. Importantly, the Sororitas did not let this loss go unremembered. 12 years later, Canoness Sephirina of the Order of Our Martyred Lady led a mission back to Sanctuary 101 to reconsecrate the site and recover the bones of the fallen. In doing so, they stirred up another Necron attack, but this time the sisters came prepared and in force. In a hard-fought engagement, they actually succeeded in temporarily routing the Necrons and even destroyed a Necron tomb complex beneath the moon of Sanctuary. Sanctuary 101 was re-sanctified, its chapel rebuilt, and the names of the martyrs etched into a new marble altar. Although ominously, during the nightmare across the galaxy that accompanied the Great Rift's opening, it said the Necrons returned once more to that Arcee's site. The war against the Undying is never truly over. Still, that initial reconquest was a moral victory and a testament to the sisterhood's resolve. They will return to the very jaws of hell to honor their fallen and defy the enemies of the Emperor. If Necrons were one shocking new foe the sisters encountered, another crisis of the 41st millennium involved a more diabolical enemy from within. Chaos, in one of its most catastrophic invasions. This culminated in the event known as the 13th Black Crusade, launched by Abaddon, the Despoiler, War Master of Chaos. The main target was the fortress world of Cadia, the linchpin of Imperial defenses against the Eye of Terror. The fighting on Cadia was apocalyptic, and the Sisters of Battle were very much present, fighting and dying alongside the Imperial Guard, Space Marines, Titan Legions, and other defenders. It was during the climax of this campaign, in 999 Marv 41, that one of the most awe-inspiring miracles of the age occurred. The return of Saint Celestine. We touched on Celestine's earlier rise during the Palatine Crusade, but here she truly became a savior figure to the Imperium. As Cadia's skies burned with hellfire and the ground split under the weight of Chaos's onslaught, Celestine appeared at the head of a long-lost fleet of reinforcements. Thousands of battle sisters thought to have been swallowed by a warp storm centuries prior, translated out of the immaterium above Cadia, guided, it is said, by Celestine's divine light. They made planet fall right into the thick of battle, the living saint at their forefront, like a blazing comet. Witnesses recount how Celestine's arrival buoyed the flagging Imperial forces. This golden armored figure with 6 angelic wings descended amid the rubble of a breached basilica. Her blade, the ardent blade, wreathed in holy fire, cutting through traitor marines and demons with equal ease. Around her, sisters of battle rallied, singing the hymn Erekra, such that even guardsmen and space marines found themselves joining the chorus. Celestine personally confronted Abaddon's demonic lieutenants, and in one notable clash, she struck down a monstrous demon prince, shattering its essence back to the warp. Perhaps even more astonishing, Celestine demonstrated the power to grant miracles to others. 2 canonesses who fought by her side on Cadia, Eleanor of the Order of the Abaddon Chalice and Genevieve of the Martyr Lady, fell in battle protecting Celestine from a horde of Black Legion Chaos Space Marines. Celestine knelt by their bodies and prayed. Moments later, before the eyes of friend and foe alike, the 2 fallen sisters drew breath again, rising fully healed and shining with holy light. They had been resurrected by the saint's faith. From that moment on, they became her devoted bodyguards, known as the Gemini Superior. This resurrection miracle sent waves of terror through the Chaos ranks. If their corpse god grants them this power, how can we slay them? Panicked some, and conversely, instilled unshakable courage in the defenders. Indeed, battle brothers of the Space Marines bowed their heads in reverence as the 2 restored sisters joined Celestine in pushing back the foe. Despite these heroics, the 13th Black Crusade's outcome was bittersweet. The planet Cadia could not be saved. Abaddon, in a final act of spite, crashed a blackstone fortress into the world, breaking it apart. Celestine and many Imperials escaped as the surface cracked and fire consumed the planet. In the aftermath, Celestine took charge of leading survivors, including the tech archaeologist Belisarius Call, Inquisitor Greyfax of the Ordo Hereticus, Marshal Marius Malreach of the Black Templars, and many battle sisters on a perilous journey. Following a prophetic vision, Celestine guided this caravan of the faithful through chaos-infested space to a hidden webway portal. And with the help of uneasy allies, Craftworld Eladar and the Harlequins, who believed Celestine to be pivotal in some cosmic prophecy, they made their way to Macragge, realm of the Ultramarines. On Macragge, events continued to unfold rapidly. It was there that Belisarius Call and Greyfax with Eldar aid managed to resurrect the Ultramarines' Primarch, Robert Gillen, who had been in stasis since being mortally wounded in the Horus Heresy. Saint Celestine stood by as Guilliman awoke from his 10,000-year slumber, acting almost like a guarantor of the Emperor's will. In this moment, one can only imagine Guilliman's first sight upon revival. A living saint haloed in light, welcoming him back to the realm of the living, and to an Imperium in dire need of salvation. Celestine then accompanied Guilliman on his Terran crusade, an odyssey across a demon-riddled galaxy, to return the Primarch to Holy Terra. They braved unimaginable dangers together, at one point even fighting their way through the demon world of a Primarch turned demon, Magnus the Red. Throughout these trials, Celestine was instrumental in keeping the faith of those around her. If a space marine, genetically bred to know no fear, might falter in those hellish environs, a simple glance at Celestine's serene beatific determination stiffened their resolve. Many said that where Celestine tread, the Emperor's own spirit must surely have been present. Eventually, Guilliman did reach Terra and took up the mantle of Lord Commander of the Imperium. Celestine, her mission for the moment fulfilled, slipped away to continue doing the Emperor's work wherever darkness reigns. She doesn't linger for accolades. One day she's at the Eternity Gate on Terra, kneeling before the Golden Throne. The next she's gone, reported in 3 systems over, leading a relief force to some besieged shrine world, such as the Way of Saints. They arrive when needed and depart when the miracle is done. In the wake of Guilliman's return and the cataclysmic birth of the Great Rift, the galaxy-spanning warp storm that split the Imperium in half after Cadia's fall, the Adepta Sororitas found themselves needed as never before. The period known as the Noctis Aeterna, when the Astronomicon light was obscured and the galaxy was plunged into literal and spiritual darkness, saw widespread panic and a spike in heresy. Whole populations feeling abandoned by the emperor lost hope or turned to dark alternatives. In those black nights, the sisters shone as beacons of faith. They launched numerous wars of faith in the early 42nd millennium, especially in the embattled half of the galaxy, now called Imperium Nihil, the Dark Imperium, cut off from Terrara's light. Sisters of Battle became the rallying point on worlds where morale was crumbling. For example, on the industrial world of Casria, as demonic legions overran the continents, and the sky was rent by warp storms, an outnumbered group of Sororitas from the Order of the Sacred Rose held the planet's last bastion, a grand cathedral. Against all odds, their canines had them form a living ring of steel on the cathedral steps. Refugees huddled behind them, and they sang the hymn Illuminatus for hours on end, without pause. As they fought amazingly, the demons faltered at this bulwark of purity reinforcements. Legend says an enigmatic band of Legion of the Damned Space Marines finally arrived, finding every sister bloodied, but still standing, still singing, and not a single demon alive within the cathedral's precincts. The sight became known as the Miracle of the Lantern, an example that spread via astropathic relay to other systems. Do not give up hope. The Emperor's angels are among you. It was during this crucible of new wars that Morinval rose to prominence. Robot Guilliman, reorganizing the Imperium's leadership, recognized the value and loyalty of the Adepta Sororitas. After all, he had seen Celestine's impact and knew the Sororitas had been holding many regions together in the darkness. The High Lords of Terror had long not included an abbess of the Sororitas, partly because the position was vacant since the disappearance of one abbess decades prior, and partly due to old tradition since the age of apostasy. But Guilliman changed that. He appointed Sister Morinval as the new Abbess Sanctorum of the Adepta Sororitas, and granted her a seat among the High Lords. This was a watershed moment. The sisters now had direct representation in the Imperium's ruling council, formalizing their voice at the highest level for the first time in millennia. Morinval was a distinguished Celestian from the Order of the Argent Shroud, noted for her strategic brilliance and personal courage. She had led numerous successful campaigns against Chaos Warbot bands in the years prior. Yet, even as she assumed one of the loftiest offices in the Imperium, Morven did something somewhat unexpected for a newly minted High Lord. She went right back to the front lines, clad in a master-crafted Paragon warsuit, a towering exoskeletal armor that turns a sister into a walking engine of destruction. Morvena and Val personally spearheaded assaults during the Indomitus Crusade, Guilliman's grand campaign to restabilize and reclaim imperial territories after the Great Rift's opening. Many on Terra were shocked that a High Lord would risk herself in battle, but Morven reportedly brushed off such concerns, saying that leading by example was the purest way to inspire the faithful. With her massive spear, the Spear of Faith in hand, and a relic shield upon her warsuit, she skewered a greater demon of Khorne during the Purge of Gathamor, and on another occasion, she and a cohort of sisters held off an entire warband of the Emperor's children, Chaos Space Marines, attempting to seize a shrine world. Her battlefield heroics quickly silenced any critics who thought a woman of the cloth had no place directing the fate of the Imperium. Under Morven and Val's stewardship, the Adepta Sororitas have only grown stronger. The sisters received new equipment and reinforcements, as Forge worlds sympathetic to the faith, and perhaps nudged by Guilliman's influence, provided them improved arms and armor. The introduction of units like the Paragon warsuits, smaller versions of Morven's own Golden War armor, gave the orders more punch against heavy targets. And yet, the spirit of the sisterhood remains the same as it was in the time of Alicia Dominica: absolute devotion. Morven herself often invokes Dominica's name in her war speeches,
reminding every sister that they carry the legacy of those 6 matriarchs from the throne room into each battle. The Sororitas, for their part, carry themselves with a certain righteous pride. There's an old saying quietly shared among some Imperial Guard officers out of earshot of any commissar or confessor, mind you. If you want something purged, right, send in the sisters. They'll even make the Space Marines look lax. In truth, the Adept Sororitas have at times evoked a mix of admiration and uneasy awe from their artist counterparts. One Black Templar's marshal, a warrior from an equally zealous Space Marine chapter, reportedly commented that the Sisters of Battle were too fervent for their own good. When this remark reached the ear of a canoness, she coolly replied, "Better too much zeal than too little, son of dawn." It said the marshal had no answer to that. Even the superhuman angels of death know that when it comes to raw, unbridled devotion, the Sisters of Battle set a standard few can match. Not all sacrifices are forced upon the sisters by enemies. Sometimes, in the cruel calculus of the Imperium, they themselves become sacrifices to uphold a higher duty. In one exceptional secret incident, after a hellish campaign that saw a demon Primarch defeated at terrible cost, a campaign from which only a handful of Imperial Guard Sororitas and the secretive Grey Knight Space Marines walked away alive, the Inquisition concluded that knowledge of what transpired had to be purged to protect the masses from panic and heresy. This directive was absolute. All who knew the truth were to be silenced. This entwyd samand was halv nufiers entwyd. The surviving guardsmen were mind-wiped or shipped off to distant penal colonies. As for the Sisters of Battle, who bore witness, they faced an unthinkable ultimatum: submit to execution to maintain the secret, or become potential liabilities to the very Imperium they served. True to their creed, the sisters did not flinch. They gathered together in prayer one final time, and then willingly, stoically met their fate by the Inquisition's hand. It said that in their final moments, they sang a psalm of martyrdom, voices steady and devout. Even as the bolter shells fell upon them, they became martyrs, not in battle against the foe, but in service to the terrible necessities of the Imperium's bureaucracy. Few know of this dark chapter. It remains sealed in forbidden records. But within the sisterhood, it is remembered with somber pride. These sisters proved that their loyalty and obedience to the Emperor's will, as delivered through his authorized agents, transcended even their own survival. They died keeping a secret so that billions of others might continue living in ignorant safety. It is a sacrifice as profound as any made on the battlefield, and it underscores that for the Adepta Sororitas, no price is too high to pay for the Emperor. Even rarer, though, are the times when a Sororitas falls in a less noble way, succumbing to actual heresy. It's almost unheard of, almost. There have been vanishingly few such instances, but one stands as a cautionary tale. The case of Sister Muriel Sabathiel of the Order of Our Martyred Lady. She is to date the only recorded Sister of Battle to have willingly turned to chaos. Muriel was captured by the Emperor's children, a Chaos Space Marine legion devoted to the depraved god Slaanesh. In captivity, something within her twisted. Perhaps it was prolonged torture breaking her spirit, or some latent weakness of the soul, and she not only broke, but swore herself to Slaanesh's service, becoming a heretic and a blasphemer of the worst kind. By the time she escaped, or was recovered, she had fully forsaken her vows, and eventually emerged as a war band leader in the service of the Dark Prince, reveling in the same excesses she once would have scorched with fire. The news of this betrayal was met with profound sorrow and fury by the Sororitas. To them, Muriel's existence is an abomination and an embarrassment. The Sisters of Battle have standing orders that if Muriel is encountered, she is to be purged with extreme prejudice. No hesitation, no attempt at redemption. She is the fallen sister, the living proof that even one of their own could fall,
and therefore none of them may let down their guard in faith for even a moment to date. Muriel remains at large, a thorn in the side of the Imperium, and an insult the sisterhood bears grimly. But the hunt for her never ceases. Every sister dreams of being the one to bring Muriel to justice, and if they ever catch her, the punishment will be legendary. In the meantime, Muriel serves as the ultimate object lesson. If a being raised and trained as a Sororitess from youth could be led astray, however rare that might be, then truly anyone is vulnerable without constant vigilance. It only redoubles the sisterhood's zeal to police their own purity as harshly as they do that of the rest of humanity. Likewise, there have been other troubling incidents. There was an occasion on a planet called Van Horn, where a splinter abbey of the Sacred Rose was infiltrated by a gene-stealer cult, insidious Xenos parasites that corrupt human bloodlines. By the time the truth was discovered, half the convent sisters had unknowingly been turned into hosts for the alien brood. When a visiting inquisitor, accompanied by his elite stormtroopers, uncovered the infestation, the uncorrupted sisters had to make a horrific choice: purge their own tainted sisters. In a night of heartache and purification, bolters thundered inside that convent's walls as the loyal Sororites executed their corrupted siblings. The Inquisitor's report commended the Sororitas for their unswerving resolve to root out impurity even among their own. But it was a tragedy nonetheless, one the ecclesiary quietly suppressed in official annals, for it wouldn't do for the public to think even the brides of the emperor could fall victim to alien seduction. To the sisters, it reinforced a crucial lesson: vigilance must be eternal, and their faith must burn ever brighter. For the moment it dims, the enemy, be it chaos or Xenos, will slither in. As the Imperium's enemies grow more numerous and bold in this darkening age, the sisterhood's zeal only intensifies to meet the challenge. From the quiet shrines of backwater colonies to the grand cathedrals of terror, their voices rise in unison. A million prayers, a million battle cries, all carried on the same unwavering faith. So long as the Sisters of Battle live and fight, the Emperor's light shall never be extinguished, no matter how dark the night. Over 10,000 years have passed since the Emperor of mankind ascended the Golden Throne. In that time, countless warriors have fought and died for him. The Adepta Sororitas are unique among them, a sisterhood of warriors whose faith is their armor as much as ceramite, who have elevated the act of war to a sacrament. They chant battle sermons and call it combat doctrine. They ignite flamers and call it delivering the Emperor's justice. Cynics might say they're fanatics. The sisters would smirk and respond: faith is our shield, doubt is for the weak. The Emperor to the sisters is not an abstract figurehead or distant icon. He is their divine father and protector. They do not merely respect him, they love him with a burning passion and worship him as God incarnate. This sets them apart even from other imperial forces. Many space marines, for instance, revere the Emperor as the greatest of men, but stop short of prayer in the same devotional way. Some Astartes even have their own cult interpretations of the imperial truth. The Sisters of Battle, however, have no such reservations. In their eyes, the Emperor truly is a living deity who hears their every prayer. Their faith is a personal relationship. They beseech him for guidance, thank him for every victory, and offer penance for any failing. Perhaps it is precisely this intense, unconditional faith that enables the miracles they experience in the metaphysical reality of the Warhammer universe. Emotion and belief can indeed shape outcomes. The warp itself responds to passion. Just as the dark powers feed on despair and bloodlust, so too might the pure devotion of the Sororitas draw upon the Emperor's grace. A sister will swear that when she is chanting a battle psalm, she feels the Emperor's presence like a warm light in her soul, steadying her aim or soothing her wounds. Who can say she's wrong? Whether it's true divine intervention or the psychosomatic effect of unshakable confidence, the results are real. When faith is your armor, it's amazing what you can withstand. In many documented cases, sisters have performed acts that defy reason, surviving wounds that should be fatal simply aren't. Their aim striking exactly true at the critical moment. A flamer's burst, flaring impossibly bright, just when a heretic thinks himself safe. The sisters themselves will tell you this is the Emperor answering their prayers. The cynical might call it coincidence or some latent psychic effect, but to those witnessing it, there's no doubt that the Emperor walks with these women in battle. Time and again, sisters of battle have displayed what can only be called miracles on the battlefield. Wounds that should be fatal simply aren't. Their bodies endure beyond normal human limits. A battle sister's aim might strike exactly true at a critical moment, as if guided by a divine hand. At times, a sister's flamer or melter will flare impossibly hot, burning through a heretic champion's prized wards, as though those defenses weren't even there. The sisters will always claim this is the Emperor's intervention, the answer to their faith, while others in the Imperium serve the Emperor. The
sisters arguably have the most fervent personal devotion. To them, the Emperor is not just a distant ruler or mythic ideal. He is an ever-present guiding spirit and loving father. They pray to him like a living deity, for indeed, the ecclesiarchy declares he is God. The sisters' absolute belief might actually be the secret of their power. In the warp, faith and emotion carry literal energy. It may be that their collective zeal taps into the Emperor's own psychic might, manifesting as these miracles. In a universe where dark gods grow strong on blood and fear, the sisters prove that purity and love can be just as potent a fuel. A sister superior once famously said, "The Emperor's light shines through us. We are but its lens." When one witnesses them at war, it's hard to disagree. Something more than mortal is at work. A sister's life is one of asceticism and regimentation long before she ever sets foot on a battlefield. Many sisters start as orphans of imperial servants raised from childhood in the Schola Progenium, the Imperium's network of orphanages and mimes for the children of the honored dead. The Schola Progenium is itself a harsh crucible. Its pupils drilled in combat training, survival, academia, and above all, unyielding loyalty and faith. By the time a progenitor girl is in her mid-teens, she can recite entire scriptures from memory, shoot a last gun with pinpoint accuracy, and march for miles on meager rations while singing hymns of praise. Those who show exceptional piety, discipline, and martial promise are marked as candidates for the Adepta Sororitas and sent to a convent to begin their novitiate. Upon joining a convent, a young novice enters a world that is equal parts monastery, boot camp, and convent school. Every hour of the day is accounted for in a rigid schedule. At dawn, the call to prayer echoes through the stone halls. Novices and sisters alike assemble in the main chapel, kneeling in the glow of stained glass windows depicting the Emperor and various saints. They chant litanies, some to seek the Emperor's guidance, others to reaffirm their vows. By the time the last Imperator is sung, the sun, if the planet has one visible, has barely risen, and they are already expected to be fully alert and spiritually ready for the day. What follows is a blur of training and devotional practice. A novice might spend her morning drilling with live weapons under the watchful eye of a stern sister superior bolter practice, close combat sparring with neural whips to discourage laziness, exercises in squad coordination, all punctuated by shouted quotations from the rule of the Sororitas. "Suffer not the witch to live," one instructor shouts as the trainees practice target firing at a holographic witch, or a moment of laxity spawns a lifetime of heresy as they practice clearing rooms swiftly. The physical regimen is grueling. More than one aspirant has collapsed from exhaustion during these trials. Some get back up and are commended for their perseverance. Others are quietly dismissed from the novitiate if deemed too frail. Those might go on to become lay staff or join a non-militant order if their faith is strong, but body weak.
Afternoons might be spent in the study halls or prayer cells. The sisters are highly educated in matters of theology and history, at least the ecclesiarchy's approved version of history. They pore over tomes, recounting the lives of saints, imperial crusades, and previous wars of faith. They memorize the sermons of Sebastian Thor and the precise strictures of ecclesial law. A sister must not only fight with bolter, but with righteous words, for part of her role is to inspire others and denounce heresy with conviction. Many sisters can quote scripture as readily as they can field a bolter, and they can do the latter blindfolded, by the way. Evenings are often dedicated to maintenance and contemplation. Maintenance is a holy act for the sisterhood. Cleaning one's bolter isn't just chores, it's a ritual. A sister will ritually anoint her weapon with sanctified oils, reciting the psalm of cleansing as she disassembles and reassembles each sacred component. Armor is repaired while chanting the canticle of shielding. By treating their war gear with such reverence, they ensure the machine spirits within are appeased and the weapons function at peak efficacy. It's not uncommon for a bolter that has been lovingly maintained by generations of sisters to be thought to fire truer or jam far less than one in the hands of a less devout soul. Whether that's mechanically sound or not, the sisters believe it, and perhaps the machine spirits respond to that devotion. When night falls, or whatever passes for night on a void station or ship, the sisters conclude with another prayer session, thanking the Emperor for the day's lessons and asking forgiveness for any errors. Then they retire to modest cells, little more than a cot, beneath a tapestry of the Emperor's symbol, to snatch a few hours of sleep before the next day's pre-dawn prayers. Through this rigorous life, bonds of sisterhood are forged in steel. A novice who stumbles in sword practice will find 10 sisters offering hands to lift her up after the instructor steps away. If one sister falls ill, another willlessly take on her duties, so that no quota goes unfulfilled. They truly live as a community of faith and war. By the time a novice earns the rank of full-fledged sister, usually marked by a ceremony where she is given her order's habit and her first suit of power armor, she has been molded body and soul into a weapon of the Emperor. We've spoken much of their faith, but how does that actually translate to war? In the grand theater of battle, the Sisters of Battle are relentless and direct. They don't deploy as massive legions like the Imperial Guard. Rather, they strike as elite purposeful forces, more akin to Space Marines in that sense, though usually in smaller numbers per engagement. A typical Sororitas strike might involve a few hundred battle sisters at most, sometimes as few as a single squad, depending on the task. But each one of those sisters is worth a platoon of lesser troops in effectiveness. And certainly in morale impact, their approach to weaponry is encapsulated in what they call the Holy Trinity of battle. Bolter, flamer, melter, these are the weapons most sacred to their cause. The bolter or bolt gun is a 75 caliber firearm that fires self-propelled explosive rounds. To a Sororitas, the bolter's thunderous report is the voice of the Emperor delivering judgment. They maintain and adore their bolt guns with the same devotion a knight might have for his sword. Many sisters name their bolters, for example, Divine Right or Penitence Roar. There's a tradition that a sister marks a tally in High Gothic on her bolt gun for each noteworthy foe slain, not out of vanity, but as an offering, each mark signifying another sinner dispatched unto your judgment, O Lord. When a sister superior calls volley fire, and an entire squad of sisters opens up with bolters in unison, it's like a thunderous hymn of destruction. No matter how many times one sees it, it's hard not to be it by the discipline and firepower. The flamer, flamethrower, is perhaps the most emblematic Sororitas weapon in the popular imagination. The sisters love their flamers, and why not? Fire is the ultimate purifier. A goat of Promethean flame will cleanse heresy in a way everyone can understand, viscerally. And finally, cleanse with flame is practically a sisterly motto.
Indeed, entire squads called Dominion squads often carry nothing but flamers or melters to specialize in close-range shock assault. The Sororitas maintain an almost ceremonial reverence for the act of burning heretics. Many carry gilded igniters or specially blessed pilot lights on their flamers. Some have flamers that have been handed down for generations, rumored to contain a vial of burning chemicals from Sebastian Thor's own torch. Likely apocryphal, but they believe it. There is no terror quite like being a heretic, barricaded in a hat block, and hearing the muffled chorus of Emperor cleanse this place, followed by the whoosh of multiple flamethrowers, turning your hideout into an inferno. The sisters do not take surrender very readily. Once the flamers are lit, only ashes
remain.
Ihre.
The melted gun, or melter, is a short-ranged thermal weapon that basically emits a blast of superheated molecules capable of turning even heavily armored targets into molten slag. To the sisters, it's the answer to the particularly stubborn or heavily fortified enemies. Where a flamer cleanses the flesh, a melter unmakes the hardiest machines or mutants. They view it as the Emperor's lance, a focused beam of his wrath that nothing can withstand. A Sororitas assault often pairs melters with flamers, creating a 1-2 punch. Melters blast open the bunker or crack the tank's armor. Then flamers bathe the exposed insides. On the receiving end, it's hard to imagine a worse nightmare. Maybe being on the business end of a Tyranid digestion pool, but that's another horror entirely. And of course they have bolt pistols, chain zords, power swords, grenades, and all manner of supporting weaponry. But Boltus Flamer Melter are the holiest trifecta. Even their heavier support tends to align with this philosophy. The Immolation Flamer tank essentially mounts an enormous twin-linked heavy flamer on a Rhino chassis, turning it into a mobile purgation vehicle. The Exorcist is a marvel, a vehicle that combines music and missile artillery. It looks like an ornate pipe organ on tracks. A sister, the Exorcist's gunner, literally plays a hymn on the keyboard, and each key launches a missile from the organ's pipes. It's both ridiculous and sublime. Nothing says divine retribution like killing the enemy with a choir song turned barrage. The missiles themselves are often inscribed with psalms and have incense burning off their tails as they fly on the battlefield. The sound of an exorcist firing, a rising organ chord culminating in a thunderous whomp as rockets streak out trailing smoke, is enough to send many a heretic running in irrational fear. They think the Emperor's angels are literally singing as they bombard them, which is kind of true. The Sisterhood also makes use of terrifying close support units like the Penitent Engine. Now, a Penitent Engine is not crewed by a sister, since a sister's faith is considered beyond question to need such a punishment. Instead, these engines are piloted by those deemed sinners seeking redemption. Often, a heretic who repented and begged for a chance to earn forgiveness in death, or a sister who committed a grave error and submitted herself to extreme penance. The pilot is wired into a walking frame, covered in buzzsaws, blades, and flamers. Pain stimulants and indoctrination spikes flood their mind with guilt and ecstasy in a confusing cocktail, driving them into a berserker frenzy of self-loathing and desire for absolution through death. When unleashed, a penitent engine charges the foe with no regard for self-preservation. Saws whirring and flamers spewing from its arms. Enemies witness a howling figure, often visible through a front grille, thrashing in agony as they pilot the thing, laying about with insane fury. It is terrifying and extremely effective as a shock unit. To the Imperium, it's killing two birds with one stone. You kill heretics with a former heretic. To the Sisters, it's a grim but just fate for those who need it. When a penitent engine pilot dies in battle, they believe his or her soul is forgiven by the Emperor, having literally been burned clean through service. It's a fate they do not relish for anyone, but they won't hesitate to deploy it for those who must atone. On the flip side of that internal discipline are the Sisters Repentia. We touched on them earlier, battle sisters who have in their own eyes, or by judgment of their superiors, fallen short of the Sororitas standards and seek redemption in the most direct way. They strip off their power armor, fighting unarmored as a sign of humility and penance. They don simple robes or go bare-armed save for some tattered remnants of their habits. They take up gigantic chains, or known as eviscerators, often as tall as they are, and march into the most dangerous front lines. A Sister Repentia is a fearsome sight, her hair often shorn, her body scarred from self-flagellation, eyes wild with a mix of anguish and fervor. Before a charge, a Repentia squad's appointed mistress, the one sister who remains armored and carries an electro whip to guide them, will shout something like, "Daughters of the Emperor, repent," and the Repentia will scream prayers of forgiveness as they hurl themselves at the enemy. They don't care about death. In fact, they court it. Their goal is to die in righteous battle, thus atoning for whatever failure haunts them. Ironically, this makes them incredibly dangerous to the enemy. You cannot intimidate or outlast someone who wants to die and take you with them. Many foes have learned that a charging Repentia feels no pain, not even when riddled with bullets. She'll keep coming, chainsword, revving, perhaps limping on a shattered leg, but still intent on cleaving you in two before she expires. And if she survives somehow, drenched in the blood of the enemy, that is seen as the Emperor's saying, "Your penance is not done yet. Live on and fight again." Such survivors sometimes earn their way back into the Order's ranks, their sin deemed expugned by valor. Now, one cannot discuss the Sororitas in combat without mentioning how they bolster nearby troops. The sisters fight often alongside the Astrometerum, Imperial Guard, and sometimes Space Marines, or even the forces of the Inquisition. Their presence is like a shot of adrenaline for loyal soldiers. Seeing warrior nuns calmly advancing through fire, singing hymns, can stiffen the spine of even a panicking conscript. The ecclesiarchy often dispatches confessors and preachers with the sisters during campaigns. These fiery clergy, unarmored, waving chain swords or staffs topped with reliquaries, run among the lines, bellowing sermons that reach a fever pitch. It's not unusual to hear a call and response on a battlefield where sisters are present. A preacher might cry, "Who protects us?" And the soldiers around roar, "The Emperor protects," all while the sisters themselves add their own more literal protection by mowing down enemies. Morale is as much a weapon as any gun, and the Sororitas wield it expertly. Of course, the sisters themselves need no external encouragement. Their morale is virtually unbreakable. They do not retreat unless ordered by a superior or a clearly higher strategic necessity arises, and even then some have to be commanded to fall back or they'd fight to the last. Fear, as an emotion, has been almost surgically excised from them by faith. They truly believe if they die, they go to the Emperor's side. So what is there to fear? And they believe if they live, it's because the Emperor still has work for them. So no wound or setback can shake them for long. The Adepta Sororitas began as a spark of faith amid betrayal, a small cult of warrior women deceived by a tyrant. They transformed that shame into penitence, that penitence into strength, and that strength into a beacon of purity for the entire Imperium. Through fire and blood, through the singing of hymns under artillery bombardment, and the recitation of litanies over the dying, they have proven time and again that faith in the Emperor is the greatest weapon of all. They are the bolter in his hand, the shield before his people, and the avenging sword that strikes down those who would lead mankind astray. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is indeed only war. But the Sisters of Battle bring not peace, only the Emperor's peace, delivered by holy bolter and hallowed blade. Even as the galaxy around them burns, they strive to make that fire a purifying one, the Emperor's flame scourging the darkness. And though their methods are brutal, their hearts, encased in ceramite as they may be, are pure and burn with love for humanity's guardian and God. They have watched worlds burn, and yet kept the faith. They have seen the foulest abominations the galaxy can vomit forth and stood firm when others faltered. They are in a sense ordinary human beings who accomplish the extraordinary,
because they believe without question that the Emperor walks with them. So the next time you hear a distant hymn reverberating across a battle-scarred city, or smell incense and promethium on the wind, know that the Adepta Sororitas are here. And if you ever find yourself on the wrong side of the Emperor's judgment when they arrive, well, Emperor, have mercy on you, because the Sisters of Battle certainly will not.